Good morning, everybody. Right, this is our new book. This is Coming to England. It's a new book. We were going to read it in the summer term anyway, but we're going to do it now, and it's got some nice illustrations in it, so I thought it would be quite a nice one. So the first chapter is Life in Trinidad, and it's got some really nice pictures, so hopefully you'll be able to see those as well. So, Life in Trinidad. The day my brother Ellington was born, my elder sister Sandra, who was 4, my brother Lester, who was 2, and I, aged 3, were all on the gallery. That's what we called the veranda. My mother, whom we affectionately named Marmee, had told us that if we looked hard enough, we'd see a stork flying high in the sky with our new baby. I was hungry and really wanted Marmee to make one of her delicious soups for us, but I dared not take my eyes off the sky, just in case I missed the big arrival. Anyway, Mrs. Jackson, the local midwife who lived in the lane opposite our house, said we couldn't come into the house to see my mother until she called us. I was beginning to feel more and more hungry, tired and anxious, but I still kept my eyes glued to the heavens. Suddenly, I heard the loud cry of a newborn baby. I felt happy but disappointed at the same time because I hadn't seen that stork arrive. My mother told us it had come through the back door. I looked for it years later when my brother Roy and sister Cynthia arrived. Mrs. Jackson was always there, but I never spotted that elusive stork coming through the front or the back door. The house we lived in was a small wooden building on stilts with dazzling whitewashed walls. There were windows and doors at the front and the back. We had 2 bedrooms which were the scene of many pillow fights and trampolining sessions, a small washroom with a sink and a cold tap, an airy kitchen with large glassless louvered windows where we ate all of our meals, and finally a sitting room where no one was allowed except on special occasions or when we had visitors. This room was my mother's pride and joy. Its brilliant white curtains always smelt fresh, and the mahogany furniture was always highly polished, as was the wooden floor. My sister and I spent many hours polishing and shining that room from as far back as I can ever remember. We had to do the polishing before we left for school every day. The comfortable wooden chairs in the room were draped with crisp white lace headdress and the round table, which we ate from on Sundays and other special occasions, and had a doily in its centre on which sat a vase of glorious fresh flowers. They were from our small front garden, which was full of exotic sweet-smelling flowers and shrubs, such as beautiful flame-red hibiscus, which seemed to attract swarms of exquisite butterflies and hovering hummingbirds in search of nectar. The backyard was where Marmee grew vegetables for our kitchen, like pigeon peas, cassavas, okra and dasheen. A tall bushy tree stood in the yard, reaching up to the kitchen window, and whenever one of us had a bad cold, Marmee would pick some of the leaves, boil them and give us a vile-tasting liquid to drink. It always made us better. I guess the thought of a second dose was enough to do the trick. Also in the yard was a galvanised shower unit where we had our baths. There was no hot tap, but the cold water was always warm because of the heat of the sun. During the drought season, from around July to September, we'd have to get our water from a standpipe in the street. Everyone would queue up with a large enamel bucket, oil can or basin, anything big enough to carry the water really. And the washing was done under the house in a big wooden tub with a scrubbing board, and the washing lines hung between 2 trees in the backyard. Our car was also parked under the house. And at the bottom of the yard was the latrine, the outside toilet. It was a small wooden hut, and none of the planks of wood quite met, allowing chinks of light to shine through. Inside was a 4-metre deep hole reinforced with concrete. A wooden seat was built on top like a throne. The lock for the door was a piece of string which was hooked over a large nail, and the square pieces of toilet paper were cut out of sheets of newspaper and hung on one of the walls. The comic strip pages were always made good reading, but the only problem was you could never finish a story because the last part had inevitably been chopped off to make another sheet. I didn't mind using the latrine during the day. I would imagine myself as a queen sitting on a throne holding court, but in the evenings it was a different story. The scratching sound of the crickets, the loud deep croaks of the toads, the buzzing and flashing sparks of the night insects was enough to drive any child's imagination wild, and I was no exception. I hated to visit that dark hole, even in the flickering light, and the candle was no defence or comfort. I liked sitting on the gallery after dark, though. We'd sit there at night with 2 rocking chairs with my father. Dardy used to tell us some amazing tales, his own stories as well as Anansi stories, the tales that came from Africa to the Caribbean. Dardy was born in Antigua and came to Trinidad where he met Marmee when he was 19. So he would tell us stories about his homeland and about the capitals of the world, where they were, how many people lived there. We were quizzed on these night after night, and he also gave us vivid descriptions of American movies and film stars, and we were each given a film star's name as well as a pet name. Mine was Martha Ray, because I used to love to dance and sing like her. And in fact, we each had to do a party piece before we went to bed, parading and performing up and down the gallery like superstars. There was no television, so we had to make our own entertainment. But once a month, he would take us to a film at the cinema in San Fernando. Dardy felt it was his duty to open our eyes and minds to the world, even though we lived on a small island just a few miles from South America. He always found time to play with us, even though he worked hard as a field policeman. He patrolled the huge oil refinery at Pointe-à-Pierre, which is near the oilfield forest reserves in the southwest of the island. He wore a khaki uniform with brass buttons, which we all took great pride in polishing every night so they would glitter in the sunshine just like gold. We always ran to meet him on his way from work, and he would carry us home like a strong giant, 2 under his arms and 2 on his shoulders, while the 2 youngest watched. Then he would toss us in the air like acrobats. Oh, what excitement! We didn't always have our meals with Dardy because he worked shifts, but we would crowd around him whenever he had his meals. Food played a very important part in our lives. Marmee insisted that we had plenty of it and her cupboards were never empty. She insisted we all ate well so we would grow up big and strong. Mind you, we didn't need much encouragement. It was always a race to see who finished first or ate the most food. Not a scrap was ever left on those plates. For breakfast we'd have fresh homemade bread, scrambled eggs or salt fish, fresh fruits and tea, which would mean anything from fresh grated cocoa, coffee or tea itself. After breakfast we had to line up to be given a dose of cod liver oil, which was hideous. The fishy, oily liquid seemed to line the inside of the throat and stay there. It was one of the few things I didn't want to be first in line for when it was my turn. I used to hold my nose, and only the promise of a piece of orange would encourage me to take it. Marmee told us it was good for our bones and teeth, which was true, but it didn't make it taste any better. For lunch, it was either a rich, tasty soup, which was like a stew made of meat, pulses, vegetables and dumplings, or rice served with beef, chicken, or on Fridays, fish. For dessert, we had whatever fresh fruit was in season, mangoes, pineapples, pawpaw, or I think this is called pomsitia. Don't know, you could look that one up. And for supper, we had bread and cakes, all baked by Marmee, washed down with cocoa. Saturday was Marmee's baking day, and she would bake enough for the whole week. Bread or bakes, a sort of bread with no yeast, sweet bread with coconut and sugar, sponge cakes and coconut drops. The smell of her freshly made bread and cakes was wonderful. It always made me hungry. It's actually making me a little bit hungry as well. Sandra and I had to do our bit by helping to grease the baking tins and stir the cake mixture. The best part was when we fought over licking the cake bowl. Do you ever do that? I do that if I ever make a cake. And actually it's not that often. Right, Sunday was a special day in Trinidad. It was the one time of the week when we all got together, which gave me a happy feeling of belonging and a sense of occasion. The realisation that the family unit was special began to take place during that time. We ate lavishly in the sitting room. The crisp starched white tablecloth would be spread out over the mahogany table, and the best glasses, frosted colour ones, and plates were used. Then the table would be laden with dishes of food. It was like a feast. On the menu was brown down chicken, rice, plantains, callaloo, sweet potatoes, cassavas, gungo peas, macaroni cheese pie, and to drink we'd have sour soup made with limeade, or limeade made from the fresh fruit and ice bought from my mother from the ice truck, which came round every day. Not many people had refrigerators, so the big blocks of ice would be wrapped in sackcloths and newspaper, and would be kept in a big wooden tub. Pieces of ice would be broken off with an ice pick, which was very sharp. For dessert, Dardy would make ice cream in a special ice cream tub. It was a thick metal churn inside a wooden tub with ice, salt and newspaper crammed between the two. The ice cream mixture was made up of custard powder, fresh vanilla, condensed milk, sugar and gelatin. We'd always drop 5 cents into the churn, and when the ice cream was served, the lucky person who found the coin would keep it. We all excitedly took turns to churn the container round and round to make the ice cream set, which seemed to take forever. And when Marmee was not cooking, she was doing other household chores, and while she worked, she sang songs. She didn't have a particularly good voice, but that didn't stop her. Her singing was very infectious, so whenever we helped her, we sang too. She sang while she washed, cooked, cleaned and ironed. And the iron she used was a big, heavy cast iron one with hot coals inside it. That reminds me of Grandma, who comes in when she did the cooking with Capybara, and she came in to do the assemblies with the story time. It's a really nice illustration there. I thought I'd just show you that one. So she had to wrap a towel around the handle to hold it because it was so hot. Marmee also made all our clothes, even down to our knickers and our petticoats. Most people made their own clothes, but Marmee was always creative in what she made for us to wear. She had style, a real flair for fashion. People often used to stop and admire all 6 of us when we were dressed and out with her and Dardy. The job that Marmee seemed to love doing best was shopping at the local market. What a spectacular event that was. The market was a big concrete 2-storey building with steps leading right up to it. There were concrete slabs where the stallholders displayed their wares. Meat, fruit and vegetables had to be bought every day. The smell was intoxicating. The air was full of the scent of fruit and spices mixed with a tinge of sun and sea. At the busy, bustling market, the noise was deafening. The stallholders tried to outshout each other as they attempted to attract the attention of all the customers. The customers in turn haggled over the prices. You could buy anything there: live chickens, breadfruit, sugarcane, cocoa pods, pineapples, rice, sweet potatoes, sweet corn, guavas, yams, dasheen, limes, grapefruit, mangoes, tomatoes, cassava and enormous watermelons. Watermelons have a special association for me because of the day I saw one come unceremoniously topple out of a truck. It was on one of the many days when Marmee had sent Sandra and I to the market with a shopping list, some dollars and cents and instructions not to overspend but to get the best things. And on the way to the market, we saw a stray dog run across the road in front of a truck full of juicy watermelons. The driver had to slam on his brakes so hard that the flimsy wooden side of the truck collapsed, sending the ripe watermelons cascading onto the road and leaving it awash as a sea of red mush. Shoppers scattered as the melons tumbled down the street. They, like us, couldn't stop themselves from laughing, but the driver was furious. The dog disappeared into the crowd, but the red colour of the watermelon stayed in the road for days. It was also a great adventure whenever we had to buy fish. And look at that. What a fantastic illustration. That's beautiful, isn't it? Sandra and I used to hold hands and skip down the lane to the wharf where the fishermen sold their catch. Fish of all sizes were on sale: red snappers, herrings, butterfish, barracudas, crabs, shrimps and lobsters. Once we were privileged to witness a fisherman's dream, the biggest fish imaginable. It was about 3 times the size of me. The fisherman, who was the star of the day, had caught a shark, and as customers gathered around to touch and admire the stone-grey giant of a fish as it hung high, its vicious, grinning mouth pointing to the ground, I pushed my way forward to get a closer look. I came eye to eye with the huge monster, and as I stared back at it, I was convinced that it had winked at me. Marmee sometimes took us shopping in the big towns like San Fernando and Port of Spain, where there were large stores like Woolworths. There were also furniture stores as well as stores selling fabrics, books and shoes. They were very similar to the stores in any big city, really. I really didn't like going to them because Marmee would always tell us not to touch the glass counters in case we broke them. I much preferred going to Mr. Ching's shop, which was like an Aladdin's cave. It was our local corner shop and sold everything from scrubbing brushes and soap to butter and powdered milk, from shoelaces and matches to sweets and candles. I found joy and pleasure in the simplest things. It took very little to make me happy because Marmee had taught us how to be contented with what we had, how to make our lot seem like the best in the world. I'd learned from an early age how to have pride in myself and my country, and during this period of my life, everything seemed absolutely perfect. I'll do chapter 2 tomorrow. See you later. Bye.